Rick, when you're developing things that are new and there's resistance to what you're doing, either through ignorance or maybe because of commercial interests or through all sorts of other mechanisms, you kind of see the ups and downs of this. And you told me a little bit about that. You know that you were expecting some of the soil health stuff to flare up and then to go away. Tell us a little bit about that story, that sort of ride that you've been on.
Well, it's kind of like the one-day CO2 method. Year after year, we kept watching that, running lots of samples.
And what year did you?
This is 94 when
94,
it started.
yeah, okay, yeah.
And I kept expecting it to fail. It's like, this can't be, it's too good to be true. It can't work like that. But it did, and it still does. And it took a long time to convince me that it was going to work.
So even though you believe in the technology, you are still really skeptical, if you like,
Yep.
that it would be adopted in the broader sort of application in agriculture.
Yeah, and I'll tell you why it works. The microbes don't have a political agenda. They don't have a social agenda. They don't care about politics. I mean, they have been doing this forever, for millions of years or thousands of years, depending on your religion, right? And so they know what they're doing. Our job is to figure out what they're doing and do it in a way that's passive, to observe and not demand. And so, and the neat thing about Solvita is it's a passive system. That little paddle, it doesn't sit there and absorb CO2, and trap it. It's a passive system. And I had a guy that was a professor at A&M forever in soil mineralogy.
Yep.
Joe Dixon was his name.
Yep.
And I'll never forget, he'd been in soil work for 50 years.
Yep.
Highly respected internationally. And he told me one time when he found out what I was interested in when I was in grad school, and he said, Rick, the least amount of things you do to the soil, the better your results will be. And I've never forgotten that.
Wow. Yeah.
And here's a guy with 50 years of mineralogy experience where they really beat soil up, telling me that.
Yeah.
That stuck.
So that's the Heisenberg uncertainty principle, isn't it?
Yeah.
When you measure something, you inevitably change
that's
it.
right.
Yeah, okay. Well, that's good.
That doesn't mean we shouldn't measure it.
Right. Let's sort of step back into your philosophy of soils and try. You've spoken about it a little bit, but perhaps, and you have talked about it a bit, but I'm going to try and probe you a little bit more. Our philosophy of science, I think, also prevents us from sometimes accepting what we're doing right, what you're doing right now. There's a philosophy of science, regardless of the vested interests, that says this is not really giving us the correct information. So I'm being just the devil's advocate. Talk to me about the contrasting philosophies of science where people are looking purely at inorganic versus kind of what you guys are doing, what the soil health people are doing.
Well, you can look at a piece of the puzzle, or you could try to be more holistic. And I think the whole soil health movement is a holistic approach. It's not about no-till or conventional till. It's about soil health. And in science, I see the same type of thing. It's like we can study this one tiny little molecule.
Yes.
Or we can see the effects of the system on that molecule and gain more insight.
Yes.
And I think the real job of science is to destroy superstition. That's how I define science. That's science's job, is to destroy superstition. And we get locked into superstition. And I mean, that's just a word. If we think nitrate nitrogen is the whole game, for example,
yes,
you become almost superstition about your data set or your this or that.
Yeah.
And so science's job is to destroy that and move forward into truth. And that's just what we should be about, is the truth.
Okay.
Best we can find it.
Best we can find it. In fact, I was reading up about the Enlightenment, and one of the sort of, as the Enlightenment was happening, science was supposed to or remove superstition and fear and things like that. So, yeah, that's really interesting.
Well, you look back at Galileo and Michelangelo and all those guys. That's what they were doing.
Yeah.
and it scared people so bad because
Yeah.
they were clinging to their superstition.
Right.
I'm sure I'm clinging to ideas that will be found out to be not realistic.
Yes.
But until you show me a better way,
Right.
go do the work.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm not a fan of folks being critical that have nothing to offer. Just being critical is easy.
Yeah.
Do the work.
Yeah. Well, I guess you know now that when you innovate, you're gonna have some headwinds.
Oh, sure.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, you're not innovating if you don't.
True. That's true.
If you got a boat in the water,
Yeah.
the waves get parted for a reason. That's
Yeah.
resistance. So,
What do you see in the future for soil analysis of soils for farmers to bring? Where do you see this whole movement going?
well, I don't know.
Take me down 20 years' time, what you would love to see in every soil test lab in the country. I mean, if you could
Yeah.
wave a magic wand, what would you love to see in every soil test lab in the country?
I'd like to see the methods I'm doing because I'm biased.
Yes, of course.
But in addition, the PLFA test, phospholipid fatty acid, all tests have some issues, right?
Yes.
And it's up to the technicians and the scientists to figure, make sure they're on the mark as best we can. But we can start integrating some more things.
Yes.
I would love to see the test that I do
Yes.
integrated with soil structure, infiltration, water holding capacity, all those physical and parameters. I'd like to see all that put together in a set of packages. PLFA. The more information we get, the
Yeah.
better we can see the whole picture.
Yeah.
It's not just my set of tests or this set of tests. I'd like to see a more integrated approach to data analysis and the methods we use.
Okay. This segues in, and I've only got two, but this segues into, it will also mean that we are going to have to involve our farmers more. Is that correct?
Yeah, I
Because
think so.
a farmer's going to have to gain more understanding of his or her soils.
To do a better job. I don't know how you can do a better job if you don't understand what's going on.
Right.
I mean,
Yes.
I want them to be more involved in the process. I don't want them to call their fertilizer dealer and have them go take soil samples and have them send them a check of the fertilizer they applied. I want them to think about soil. I want them to understand the processes to some degree
Yes.
and apply that to making them more money. Because the bottom line is, do we make more money doing this? Do we have more net dollars? Not gross dollars, net dollars. And I'm guilty of that. I've been a conventional tiller all my life.
Yes.
And so this moving into no-till, I struggle with because sometimes I don't get a good stand.
Yeah.
Why? Because I'm ignorant of how to set a planter. Dave Brent and Gabe Brown could come down here and get a stand like that.
Right.
Experience, learning.
Yes.
These are the things we have to focus on.
Yes.
And in soil testing also, in soil analysis, in what our soils need, what we actually need to give them
Yeah.
to be more efficient,
So.
productive.
Yeah, so in the future, we're hoping to see farmers becoming more involved in that process, and we're also hoping to see farmers see carbon as a real
Resource.
part of their resources.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
And I want them to think. We're all, and I'm guilty of it as much as anybody else,
Yeah.
but we're all used to iPhones and this new technology,
Yeah.
and we almost don't have to think anymore.
Yeah.
And that's not a positive thing, I don't think. And I want farmers to go back to some of the basics and go, all right. I mean, I've known farmers that have farmed for 40 years and
Yes.
have no concept of what a soil microbe is or what extracted organic nitrogen. They don't even know what organic nitrogen, never heard of it.
Yeah.
We're really missing the mark on education on some of this stuff, and we need to push a little bit of that. NRCS is taking the lead on doing that, and I think it's great.
Yeah.
Education's the key. Education's the key to life in many things, not just dirt.